So I hope you can see the screen now. And no, your section A4. So we should be in section A4, and under the 1.1 section, you should see an assignment towards the end, which is on a laboratory discussion. So you need to submit a PDF copy of your answers later. So basically two assignments for the class discussion. One is bonus points if you ever provide your answers through Slido, and second, through an assignment that you need to give through PDF. So to log into Slido, just go to slido.com. I can also add the press. So dili ko ka-type, something's wrong with my icon here. So just go to slido.com, slido.com, and kindly use the code 11351. So, oh sorry. So there's an instruction on the left side. You can join at slido.com and use the code 11351. So the poll is already active. Can you provide your answer for the first question? Describe the idea of self-build in residential homes and how this will affect the planning and design of the structure. By means of a structure, we mean here that a residential structure as applied in the video. So I'll wait for your inputs in about 5 minutes, and then I will start with a short discussion. But if some students will key in faster, I can also start with the discussion based on your inputs.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Ano sa ganitong code, sir?
11351. You can see it at the left-hand side of the shared screen.
Wala, sir. I'll just post it in the chat box na lang.
Wala. Anong wala? 11351. Di ba ninyo makita? Ay, wait. Sorry. Naraman di ay. Tani ako na-share. Nara sa left-hand side.
Sir, question, sir.
Yes.
Naka-answer naman gid ko. Ay, nag-pass na ko atong sa e-learn bitaw, sir. Pwede, i-copy lang to akong gi-answer dito, sir.
Yes, but you can also improve on it.
Okay, sir.
So I'm just waiting for your inputs. Just a short question. Just describe the idea of self-build in residential housing and how this will affect the planning and design of the structure. So there's an answer, very long one from Ms. Naibe. So I may read some of the contents that based on the video. Sorry, the move. So Walter Siegel, where was it? Okay, developed a self-build system. It's amazing. Okay, and from the video, the homes you were making were pretty much simple ones. It sounds simple now, but when you try to build it, it's really difficult. You saw the difficulty encountered by the builders along the way, and we'll also discuss them one by one. You are also amazed that when the frames of the house were already intact, okay, they're installed or something, and they can still see it a bit if there's something wrong. And the people were basing it or referring it on what Walter Siegel created on which who was an architect. And yet there were some mistakes. We acknowledge that, and the people knew the design that it may cause some problems. So yeah, when the construction was there, they had encountered some financing problems, also some management problems. Like normally that house should have been up by over a month, but it took them 2 years to really finish everything. So that's one reason that you will encounter when you also make some design later. Okay, even in that phase or in that design concept, the design was pretty simple. No, there was minimal um, configurations. It was very simple lang. And you have one room, you have your bedroom, you have all these things. But when it's implemented, then some problems arise. Okay. There's also an input here from Chubb that self-build involves residents building their own house and using materials such as wood, nail, glass, and other essential needed tools, which were dependent on several types. So yeah, the materials were simple; they were readily available, and they just needed to assemble it on site. That was the beauty about the design. So the housing association can also provide a clerk of work to monitor and inspect their progress. That's good. And other things here, the builders must be extra mindful. Um, how was it, of the exact measurements of each part. Yeah, that was also the um, sharing done by the host, no? So the host was actually has a background in engineering and design, so that's why you even saw how he had to um, make a very simple design on the living room, no? When he had to utilize whichever furniture and systems that were available in the local thrift shop. Then yun lang din assemble. No? That was very admirable of him. So now that your answers are here, I may start from the most latest one. No? So this can affect the planning and design structure since, sorry, wala na ako, no? From scratch and, sorry, this can affect the planning since the materials to be used will be based on the available budget of the owner and the design is tailored to meet their own desires. So the system of self-build, I actually chose to start with it to steer the discussion on how we can better design structures, no? That even if it's a very simple structure, you have some limitations when you implement them. So as designers, you should also consider this in part of planning, in part of implementation, and in part of funding your projects. So that system of self-build was ideal for the socialized sector in UK. So what they did was to propose a solution wherein everyone can build their own house, even if you have this limited budget. And hello? Nakat ba ko? Hello?
Sorry,
Yes, sir.
Wala ka nag-cut, sir.
Wala ko na. Okay. There's a indication mong good that my connection was lost. So sorry. So going back to the socialized housing sector, have some limitations with budgeting. Kay. They have limited funds and funding was also scarce in part of the owners. So sa UK, when you say socialized housing, the idea is that individuals will build it on their own. But in the Philippines, socialized housing means that they're funded by the government and they have smaller dimensions. So, kanang mga nasa pag-ibig housing, those are socialized housing schemes. Nga, it's smaller and you can pay for it in a very flexible premium. Like, you can own a house and pay it for 30 years. That's the idea in the Philippines. But in the UK, it's quite different. When you say socialized housing, yeah, it is small, but there is a very flexible way of funding. You can borrow money from the cooperative. You can also borrow money from the government. And with this, you can have flexible arrangements on the approval, on the implementation, and even on the construction. That there's no need for you to have a professional to really monitor your work, no? So inana ang system sa UK. But in the Philippines, no matter how small the structure is, even if it's just a sari-sari store, the Philippines is quite strict that you need that to be approved by a building professional. So that system also creates a comparison between countries. And our country has some ideas on how to build um, houses using ecological schemes, no? But you will notice later that some schemes from the UK cannot be implemented in the Philippines. One thing in particular is that houses in the UK need to have an insulation. The insulation could either be in the form of a foaming system or kanang um, a synthetic system and a plastic isulod in between walls to make your rooms warm. But in the Philippines, we don't do that. Okay, what we rather want, especially for big houses and even for those in the middle class, is to have a house built in concrete because we have this notion that concrete can be stronger than regular wood. So, if there's an earthquake, if there's any natural disaster like storms, typhoons, and flooding, your house will survive if it's made with masonry, with hollow block, with concrete. But in the UK, it's different. You can use wood. There is also that system po different from the Philippines with the UK in terms of policy. In the Philippines, the total log ban is still in effect. You cannot cut a tree without permission from the government. But in the UK, they have sustainable farms for forestry. So you can even pay that forest. They have this section in their law where you can own a tree even before you're planting it. So you can use it later, di ba? So pwede na mo paliton, yung mong i-cut, gamiton din mo sa imong balay. But in the Philippines, even if you are a private landowner, if you're cutting a tree, you need to ask permission from the government. So we see these systems which actually limit the materials that we can use in our houses. And long ago, we have this freedom man to use lumber. In my family, we have large tracts of land and we had to cut coconut trees to build our houses. And everything has to be made with coco lumber, one ang mga practice. And we even have this practice that the father should help build his son's house. So we continue that tradition, but the thing is that the son should plant the tree to be used for his house. So namin yan ang marag kung sa among family nga, magtanom yung kahoy for later use. But before, you don't need to ask permission from the government. Like when we had to repair our ancestral house, we had to cut everything, no? All of the coconut trees for scaffolding and for other parts. And then later, once the total lag ban was in place, we initiated na maybe we just need to plant other types of trees na pwede magamit. So there are two main trees na pwede na tututlon without heavy restriction. One is mahogany tree, second is Gemellina tree. So you can use that for ecological designs, but you need to be very picky with the type of wood that you can use. Other sharings here that there is this self-build system and it's tailored for specific lifestyle and requirements. Okay? Specifically for small UK families. So, diya ginaka-tailor-made to siya nga mga system. So, when you try to plan a house, you should make this as a consideration, no? Nga the materials to be used will affect your design. The spacing requirements will affect your design. And even the concept that what the owner wants, the owner wants an eco home, or if the owner wants just a minimal housing, then you have to consider that in your design, no? So let's proceed to the second question. Again, I'll give you about 5 minutes to input your contribution, and you can improve on whatever assignment that you submitted in eLearn just to make more points. Just make sure that you add your name at the end of your sharing so that they can be added on to your score or grade. Second question. What is your impression on ecological home design, like the one presented on the video? Describe the elements that made the design ecological. Okay, so just make it short as possible, okay, for us to read and have an opportunity for each to share their answers. Okay, so for 5 minutes. Oh, paspas kay si Miss Sinugaya. So Miss Sinugaya shared here that there is this way of cheaper and buying existing ones. Okay, and that the layouts and interiors are different. Some have 2 bedrooms, others have 3, depending on the family size. Okay, but I'm only asking about the ecological concept, no? So regarding the design of the structure, these works made use simple timber frame system. Okay, and the post and beam structures of both schemes use minimal pad foundations at the foot of each post. To put it simply, the structure is not environmentally invasive. Why? You did not, or in the construction phase, it did not consider digging deep. Shallow tanan foundations. So, dili pare sa conventional housing nga magkalaki ka og anang base for your post. So, meaning wala kayo mo na disrupt ang layer sa soil. Second, you notice nga they built it on a slope. So, there's no need for them to hire earth moving tractors. And with that, less ang emission no contribution sa ilahang design. So I also do that in my design. Kapag maka-design kag slope, use tilt structures to minimize the disruption on the land. Okay, the disruption will come in the form of blockage. Kung magbuhat kag balay dire nga, imong gikalot ang ilalom sa slope, those water that should flow on it when there's extreme rain will just move on the sides. So this movement na sa side sila can actually cause the structure to fail later due to land movement or landslides. So in that case, still construction is ideal. So that is one feature of an ecological design. There's also that use of a green roofing system, if you notice. But just make sure that when you try to adapt the green roofing system, also consider the weight of the roof. Okay, ang green roof absorbs water, and that could be fatal to the structure. Okay, heavy man sa daan. Compared to a GI sheet na mo flow lang ang tubig, a green roof is much more heavier. There's also a sharing here that the eco home design, sorry, I always keep pressing it. Aside from being eco-friendly, they're efficient and aesthetic, meaning beautiful lugar. So yet reduces the cost of construction. Okay, relatively it's cheaper. Okay, to the UK perspective, but in the Philippines, using lumber is quite expensive. We usually buy lumber in per board foot na measurement, and if it's hardwood, if you go to Agusan del Norte, you will still find hardwood. It's very pricey. That's why we only limit the use of hardwood for furnitures. But 20 years ago, you can still use it for your main structural systems, like sa framing sa balay, sa posts, sa beams. Pero karon, galikaya na siya kay nag-total lagban naman good. There's also a sharing here that allowed construction to be sensitive by using materials that are sustainable. If you watch towards the end of the video, there's a part there when the interior paints were discussed. They used an organic paint, diba? We don't have that yet in the Philippines. I'm not sure if there are equivalents of an organic paint, but as far as I know, with what is commercially available, there's no organic paint yet. What we have are synthetic paints. And the beauty with synthetic paints is that you can get whichever color you like, but they actually release some bad emissions. So, pag naagani mall nga bago or hotel nga recently just finished, I don't usually go inside kay the emission of the paint is quite um, harmful to your health, especially that it runs in an air conditioning system. So balik-balik lang ang hangin. And when you inhale them, that could produce or give you diseases. It kind of makes you sick, like pneumonia or in some cases cancer. So galikay ko ginana ng cases. Hopefully na we have that organic type of paint here kay that will actually save more lives in cases nga we are more concerned with emissions. There's also a sharing here. Sorry, I can't. I'll try to get in again. Okay, something's wrong with my anang button here sa Google Meet. So you might observe na mawala ko agad. Okay, I'm back. And then let me try to share my screen. Something's wrong lang yun. And then I received some messages from my colleagues na cut down internet sa engineering building. But I'm in a different building now, so I still have the connection. So anyway, here are some answers. It saves some resources and design fits the standard of human living. Especially if you're starting sa imong balay, that design actually is ideal, no? Okay, you have minimal divisions inside the house. Wala kayo walls, so air can freely flow, lighting can be evenly distributed, and there's no restriction when you want to go to one place to another. That's an ecological system sa design na pwede magamit. So no obstruction, sakto to. And here, there's an indication of ecologically sensitive materials. So when you build your or design your buildings later, please consider an ecological system. We'll talk more about it kung unsaon na to implement na siya. We'll start with the window. Okay. When I design houses, I usually start with the wall and the door. But I really and um, like the way I try to position the windows. The windows man good in a house reveals the aesthetic quality of any structure. Okay, so it could be done into perspectives. First is the perspective of the observer outside the house and how the limits of privacy makes the house beautiful. In the other way around, if you're inside the house, the window actually transports you to another world outside of your home. So it could be something that the window presents an actual picture, that you cannot see like a painting inside the house, but something alive outside, no? So that's the beauty of a window. So it's basically what divides the user of the house and just the observer. And the beauty behind it would is windows allow lighting inside the house, and the way it changes throughout the day will influence the mood of the user. So the more windows you might have, they have some implications too. It can make the rooms warmer kapag masulod ang sunlight. But in some cases, if it's properly positioned, it can actually enhance the mood of the user. Just like in a classroom, we have big windows, it's bright, and we're quite focused with the instruction. But if you're inside your rooms, limited ang size of window, limited interactions outside world, then you might be too isolated. So you see, ang window really affects our mood and the way we perceive things in a house. So we'll talk more about it, especially on the ecological concepts and how you can enhance that. So thank you for your contributions. Let's proceed to the third question. The third one, do you think this design concept be enhanced for Filipino socialized housing? Identify three things that would make it ideal and three things that can be considered as a disadvantage. So three for each, and I'll wait for your contributions. So first to give his answer is Mr. Chabukino. He said that the design concept may indeed be enhanced to fit the weather and climate, and the house may be ideal if it can survive flood and earthquake. And three disadvantages would include expensive price of food materials, increased structural vulnerability, and difficulty in obtaining building materials. Okay. Another contribution here, first, that it takes time in finishing the building. Second, people involved in the building should need to be careful in measuring and constructing, or even in the implementation stage. Third, this method requires a large involvement of local authorities to make the project possible. Okay. So Cabardo also shared that the Philippines has a huge percentage of the country's population is still below the poverty line. This means that more Filipinos are struggling in building their homes, and this is because many might not be able to afford to build one. As more people are settling in poor quality housing structures, therefore I think this design concept is very ideal in the country to have those who are in need. So it's the concept that Mr. Cabardo is the concept of building that Mr. Cabardo is agreeing. On the other hand, this requires a lot of commitment, and the construction is not as simple as it looks. Sometimes it is complicated, and where is it? Okay. complicated and difficult to execute. More so, it might result in the reduction of the structure's quality. The builders must be extra careful with each process and always make sure everything is in the right measurement. Yeah, okay. The planners were there, the architects were there, but they have minimal exposure or minimal supervision to the builders. And primarily because the builders had to be the owners of the house. That's a requirement sa inadunga system. So actually, it's embedded man in the system of Filipino culture. We have the bayanihan system, di ba? And the bayanihan system, I don't know if you experienced this one, but in the rural parts of Misamis Oriental, I experienced this when your neighbors will help you build your house as long as you give them something, of course. So you can invite them to your next fiesta or have some barkada session afterwards. And there's also an option that if the um, the owner of the house have to move to the next location, especially when there are issues of flooding. So they have to carry the whole house. So I was fortunate enough to witness two occasions where my neighbors had to move from one location to the next. And until now, one of those houses still stands. No? Okay, they were built on stilt. So manang advantage sa stilt na system. And one thing you should notice also with the design from um, the Eco Home is that they only use minimal machinery. Once lang sila nakagamit og katong lift na system, no? So they even did not use backhoes, bulldozers, etc., thinking that this might further degrade the quality of the land. So that was also part of their consideration, that once they build something, it should be something that has less harm to the environment. So that's one quality of an eco home. So it goes in the construction phase and even after the construction is done. We call this assessment as the life cycle assessment. Okay, it's part of your requirements, of course, that you should learn the life cycle assessment of any material that's being used. So you should know where your concrete will be um, thrown if it's not usable anymore, or even the steel, how you can utilize some parts of it when you need to dismantle a building. Others have said that, like this one, that it could be adapted if it could survive a typhoon or a tropical cyclone, okay? And the geographical area of the Philippines is prone to typhoons. That's why it should be designed for flooding and higher wind loads. There's also a sharing here, but just a reminder, please add your name in the kanang submission. The consistency of quality is compromisable, okay? Meaning you can change it a little bit. And people learn as they build, which consumes a lot of time due to attempts and errors. And lots of errors can be overlooked due to lack of expertise. So that's the reason why there should be a system of professionals who will overlook the project or kanang supervise the project. So I hope you continue to key in your answers here. I should proceed to some instructions about your first and second laboratory exercise. So you can actually now check from eLearn added instructions for the first laboratory exercise. So here, you can see that I've added a section where you need to check the attachment. So in this attachment, you can see a sample of a house that is a proposed design. So what you need to do for your first laboratory exercise is actually create a template. So the template here is provided in PDF format, but I would like everyone to try their best to plot this in AutoCAD. So the template should be done in AutoCAD, no? This one. So this is an A3 size paper. There's an indication in the lower right portion here. Paper size is A3, okay? you also need to include that in your submission. So the template here, you need to draw this on AutoCAD. What are needed in the submission? First is an architect's perspective. Since your first exercise is an as-built plan, it means that the construction is already done. So please add a picture of the house, the building, or part of the building that you draw. So put it here in the architect's perspective. Kindly create a location map of your as-built plan. The location map should be something that shows the area where it should be located. So it's usually done through Google Earth. So go to Google Earth or OpenStreetMap and create a screenshot and then add it here. The next is a site development plan. In a site development plan, we need to see how the building is projected towards other structures and other access roads. So you should be able to demonstrate where the building is relative to the neighbors, the road, the rivers, if there are any, and any other access restrictions. Like if there are walls, if there are firewalls, or if there's a house on the next door. Normally, a site development plan is drawn in SketchUp or AutoCAD. But because your house is already finished or your building that you're using is finished, you can use Google Earth, but make sure it's quite zoomed in. If it's pixelated, just draw the lines in AutoCAD so that you can highlight where that area, like this one, we try to highlight the location of the house and how it is relative to its other elements. Now, I know that it's still your first time drawing this kind of template, but it's part of building or drawing any work. Even when I had to go through this design process when I was in my third year college, we had to create our own template. So my advice to your class is create one template for everyone. You can assign the best student here, maayo mo draft, to create the template and share it to everyone. Kada ang template that you're sharing should be in drawing file already. So what are samples of it? I'll try to share my full screen. Okay. And then open an AutoCAD project. Okay. Can everyone see my screen and my AutoCAD project?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the template here, you see here, this is drawn in AutoCAD. So everything should be here, like the seal of the Office of the Building Official, and then some other approving bodies like land use, line engineering, architectural, up until you reach the end, which is the fire department. So all of the contents here are encoded in AutoCAD. If you somehow use SketchUp, you will have some difficulty in the measurements. So my advice, Jude, is to use AutoCAD. So kindly add also other contents. Diba, I required you from e-learn to add your own seal or logo. Dire, di lang ako mag-view kaya I open it from another source. But I have a logo here. Your company name, normally we add our family name. So like for myself, we have this in our family, it's Valiente Engineers and Architects with an address here. The certificating body should be your name, but this time, just remove the engineer. Okay, delete mo engineer. Okay, just add your name. But in the bottom, please put civil engineer. Then create a blank section for the seal here. Okay, and also recall that I gave you the opportunity to use a PRC number, PTR number, the date, the place, and the tax information number or the TIN. So you can create random numbers for PRC, PTR, and TIN. Just use the instruction that I gave from eLearn. The project title should be an as-built, 1-story, 2-story, whichever you have there in your house, and add the location or address of that project. In the approved by, please add the name of your parents. You should add then the name owner on the bottom part. The sheet contents should also contain whichever is found on the main page. So if it has a perspective view, if it has a site development plan, or if it has a location plan. So it should be found in the sheet content. In the drawn by, it should be your name, and checked by, it should be my name. Kaya ako may mo check. The sheet number should be placed here because it's an as-built plan. Kindly use AS01. And then the number of pages is only 2. So you should add here for the first page 1 and then 2. And then for the second page, if ever you have 1, then 2 and then 2. To indicate that it's the second page. But I will not be giving to you the drawing file in AutoCAD. Okay, you need to create them yourself. You can create it by as a class rather. So once you make it, send it to everyone so that you have a uniform template. And other inputs should be added here, like the pictures of balay, and in the architect perspective, the location plan should be indicated here. You should also have a site development plan indicating where the building is relative to the other elements. So, do you have questions about this?
As long as the template accommodates all of that, sir.
Hello? Yes,
As long as
Pete,
the
ikaw ni Pete?
Oh, yeah, yes, sir. As long as all of the things shown on screen accommodate the template.
Yes, you need to decrease the scale so that it fits the page.
Hi, sir. Okay, question, sir.
Yes.
Dili ipakita ang skill na gigamit para sa first page, sir. Like kanang location plan,
You
site
can,
development.
yes. You can add a scale, but if you're not sure, you can also use this one. Drawn not to scale. Okay, if you're not sure. But normally, because this is A3 size paper, you can add 1:100. That's the general scale for a floor plan. If you need more, you can use 1:10, or 1:50. That's half of the 1:10.
Ay, sir, kanang nasa right side, sir. Ba? Needed ya ko na, sir.
Which one? This one? Kane?
Kanang mga architectural, structural, kana, sir.
Yes. Ibutang niyo siya kay template may sa government. Eh, ang government may mo approve. So, di nato na siya tanggalon. Even in the sample template that I gave, naman ako, nandere. Mas clean lang ni siya nga kanang sample ha. Kay architect mo nagbuhat ani ang partner architect. Katong sa ako, medyo rough kay civil engineer may kabuhat. So, inani siya, mas clean ang slate. So, i-copy lang niya siya ng mga contents. Don't worry if ang inyo makopy kay kaning content, mabantayan ninyo nga dili sila pareha o set up like diri ang building official to law, architect structural padulong din sa mechanical. But sa ako ang gipakita dire, it has the section for fire department. Okay? So okay lang, either way nga kanang design or input inyong gamiton. Pwede ra na. Next question.
Mag-send ka sa list of requirements on what the plate should contain, or
Di na ko mag-send kay naan naman ang sample template. So I expect nga kung send na sa kanang sample template will be implemented in your submission.
okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Others? Wala question?
Excuse me, sir. Connected ni siya na exercise, sir, sa katong as-built plan na katong sa among balay, sir? Na katong...
Yes, muna siya inyong template na buhaton.
Pero dili pa mag-design atong like sa whole balay, gid, sir.
Wala pa ko naman. Napani siya yung second page. First page pa lang niya siya. Nagstorya pa ta sa architect's perspective, location, and site depth.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Next question.
Okay, question, sir.
Yes, Miss Naibe.
I-apply ka po ng general list of drawings, sir, sa ano?
Okay. For the general list of drawings, for now, pwede wala sa kay. Basically, you have 2 drawings man. So, wala pa ning uban. So, pwede rin ninyo i-leave out. Pwede ra pod nga, ang table lang, wala sa sulod. Okay, duha ra man gid ka page ang naa pa. But as you move along sa end, sa submission ninyo, you need to add this one na dayon for your final design. Importante karon, you have the template, you know how to measure and put that into a drawing, and then I can comment on that for added inputs.
Ay, last, sir, kanang ang dili siya butangan aning ano, sir? Kining murag kining sa titles nga ano nga
Titles?
part ay kining sa general list of drawings, sir, ba pwede siya ibutang pero wala sa ibutang sa asset to dapit, sir?
Wala sa
Pwede ba
ibutang sa
niya?
number. Oo. Pwede man na nga naaning contents kani, pero blank pa ning numbers dire. Di pa man ninyo na ma-complete, di ba?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Pwede na. Pero as far as minimum requirements is concerned, pwede po wala sa siya. Kaya dito naman sa final na ko i-check.
Nakoy question, sir.
Yes.
Kanang regarding sa design ako, sir, kay mag-base ko sa among balay and then dili siya mosunod sa National Building Code. So,
It's okay. As built
i-adjust
plan
na ko
man.
siya, sir.
No, don't adjust. Don't
Ah,
adjust
okay,
yet.
sir.
Okay. As built pa man ni siya. Basta gani as built kung sa naa. Pero pag abot
Okay,
sa
sir.
ato ang third nga exercise, musugod naman ta sa architectural. Sa architectural, it should follow the minimum NBCP requirements.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Importante karon nala sa gid mo working drawings ba nga mapuli-pulihan kay di man na pwede nga magsugod kog design wala kay butangan ng template. Di man na dawaton sa imong kliyente o wala na say. Mo di sa professional tanawon ba ang baga. Sige. Napay next question before I proceed sa floor plans nga nasa as-built.
Sir, question, sir.
Yes.
Ang katong architect's perspective, sir, okay raman sir na pictura na mo among balay.
Yes. Picture lang sa kay as-built man gud na. Pero pag dito na ta sa third na to laboratory exercise, you should be able to demonstrate a perspective that you yourselves had to draw. Kanang kamo ginabuhat. Next question. Okay, wala na. Sige. For the as-built nga requirements sa spacing, I need to see 4 contents only. 4 lang sa kay basic pa man. First is the floor plan. The floor plan should demonstrate the dimension of the walls and their relative distances to each other. It should also show the location of the doors, like this one, D1 is door 1. Windows is abbreviated as W1. And if you notice, door 1 can be located in just one room or it could also be a duplicate of other rooms. But pasabot ana nga, the design of D1 is the same for other parts of the house. But if you change or if the dimension of the door perhaps is different, then you can transition to door 2. Same is true for windows. Pwede na daghan kayo W1. Then others dayon because they have different sizing. So you can have many W1s, many W2, and even a single W3, for example. So you need to indicate asan ang mga doors, asan ang mga windows sa inyong as-built plan. And then you can also indicate the distances like this one. This is 3,600. This is in mm. So in the measurement, I'd like everyone to also use mm na measurement. Okay, we can draw mga good smaller numbers if we use mm. If you use meters, usahay mo good mga alaan na siya o kama. So like 0.5 meters, dili din na to ma-proper og kanang implement sa field. So just use mm as a measurement. And the floor plan should also show where your furnitures are, if there's a bed, a kitchen, a dining area, and even a bedroom. If you're lost on how to draw these things, you can use blocks in AutoCAD. Blocks are automatically generated furnitures or house peripherals which you can readily add into your drawing para dili mo mag-drawing sa bed and other furnitures. So, sa floor plan, makita ang spacing kung asa gibutang ng mga furnitures. But in a dimension plan, it's only focused on all the dimensions, like the distance from the wall to the next wall, the dimensions of the windows, etc. It's more detailed. So I also would like to see you draw your dimension plans, especially that you're drawing an as-built plan. Okay? So that makes 2 sheets for laboratory exercise 1.1. The first one should contain the perspective, the location map, and the site development plan. On the second page, we should see, or second sheet rather, okay, these are big sheets. I should see 4 things. First, the floor plan. Second, the dimension plan. And a drawing of the front and rear elevation. Say pasabot sa front and rear elevation. It's a representation of the front of the house as if it's very flat. So, elevation plan din siya. Front elevation plan. Next is ang rear. The rear is the back part of the house. So, just draw the back so that we can see where the windows are located, where the roof is leading to, if it's sloping a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left. And even if you add the ground requirements, like how high is the floor compared to the ground line? How high is the ceiling compared to, or as reference from the floor line? So you can draw that and add those elements in your drawings on AutoCAD. Okay, so in AutoCAD, I can show this here. If you draw a floor plan, like in this project, you can actually, let me just change the colors. Let me adjust. Oops. Okay. So in this drawing, it basically just shows where the windows are. This is a very simple lang na ground floor plan. I also accept this one, this type, no lie dimensions. So we can see where the windows are located, the rooms, if there's a hallway, if there's a firewall, we should see them. Okay? And because plan, it did follow the NBCP requirements. Like if the room is too small compared to the minimum, if you have one access in one room, that's actually not really allowed in the building code. So kung naka room or office, it should have 2 doors. 1 exit, 1 entrance. Especially with the pandemic, kapangita ko na naka-rotate, corner na siya dapat. So in your house, dapat po minimum of 2. 1 entrance sa living room, tapos 1 exit somewhere sa kitchen. Okay? In case may fire, dito sa kagawas. Pero on socialized housing, dili tanan na followan na. One big door lang sa front, then wala na rin sa likod. Okay, firewall na ang pika side. Munang mga limitations na to. So again, just draw the dimensions in the floor plan as how you see it in the actual and other elements. Other elements that I also need to see as required in laboratory 1.1 is I should see your name, your logo, your hypothetical numbers, PRC, PIN, PTR, your names, and also the project name. Okay? Question?
Ay, sir, record yun lang rear view nga kwan, sir.
Yes, you need to draw the back part of the building, house, or if it's an apartment, then ang rear.
Okay, ralo
There'll be
sir,
a fire.
kwan. Firewall lang, sir, ba?
Ay, better, wala bintana. So, dali, lights.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay? So, even in your actual plans, maski firewall na siya, you need to draw. Kalingawin na lang nag-hatch na murag brick na naamon para lugar na RT-RT. I think I have that sample here. Wait lang. Ang iyang rear kay puro firewall. Let me check. Here. Sige. I can show this to you. So, like in this example, ang rear niya, left ni firewall. So, lang, firewall. You need to draw it also, kaya that will indicate the fire restriction requirements. Okay. Firewall should not be too high. Pwede mo naman tumba. It should have a distance above your roof. So like this one you show na ko. It should be 0.7. Okay? From the top portion of your roof, it should be 0.7 meters. Naapod na siya sa building code. That's the apex of your roof.
Ay, sir,
Other
sir, kaya
questions?
nakabaga, sir, ang firewall kasagara.
Firewall, firewalls are 0.25 meters thick. Baga na siya. Okay, usually, wala na siya kung gagmay nga balay ha, wala na siya column. Pero if na siya column, you can go as small as 0.15 meters. Allowed sa na siya.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Other questions?
Sir, kami
Yes.
ra buot sa atong mga dimension sa plate, sir, ay katong kuan sa A3 ay nga kuan.
Basically, you will copy man the sample template, diba? But it's in PDF. So I recognize you will have some difficulty on how you can allocate the dimensions. So what you can do, agree in your class how wide should be each part. Or you can actually copy and load. Nakatay na akong tips, no? You can convert the PDF directly to AutoCAD. There's an online application for that. PDF converter to DWG. You can also do that. That's a wise way of converting. I did that once. And I architect na hangul kay mo hatag og building plans, and we need that para makuha na mong dimensions sa isa ka section sa balay. So, wala man yun. We tried several times. Every time we send an email, he says that we can only send a PDF. So what I did, I looked for a program online. You can convert the PDF directly to DWG. So you also need to do that para makabalo mo sa tips ba on how you can go around these problems. So strategy po ninyo na saan ninyo na-build and design ng balay. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Any other question? Hello? Wala na? Katulgon na? Gigutom na? Nanawag na ang parents mo kaon?
Can't think of any questions, sir.
Think pa?
Cannot think of any more, sir.
Sige. If something bothers you along the way pag drawn in you, you're always welcome to send me an email or send a message in e-learning. Or if you have access to my Facebook account, pas ko maka-reply dito kay. What I do mga good, I come here early sa campus. I'm usually here by 9 a.m. And I travel 1 to 2 hours from my house to the campus. And along the way, ga-access mo yung phone. So if naka-PM mo, mas paspas na ako ma-reply. In some cases, if the email is short, I can also reply. Especially if the questions are just quick answers lang. Kaya na ko reply. But if your question is quite specific and nagdan mo akong details ito, it will take time to reply. So, sada sa class din niyo siya i-ask. But if you're uncomfortable with that, you can always send me a message.
Sir, nagpangutan na si Crystal.
Kung sa'yo pasabot ani nga mag-roof pa sa as-built plan. What do you mean by that?
Murag ibutang daw ang design sa roof sa as-built plan, sir.
As-built? In the floor plan, you can see the roof, di ba? Wala may roof dito. But in the elevation plan, we need to see the roof. But side view lang ang roof sa elevation plan, di ba? Siyempre man sa front o sa rear, it's how the house looks like if you are to arrange it longitudinal. Equal ang x of y, madali ang isura. Also in the back part, as you look at it, same yun, equal ang x of y. Okay na mag-assume sa height sa roof? Lagi, if you can't reach your roof, well, it's too risky to go there sa top sa roof with a high pitch in yung roof. You can assume if that's the case. And here's assumption that you can give. Para ma-realize ninyo, sa katasan ng 1 meter, sa katasan ng 2 meters, basta roof. Pwede ra. Any other question?
Sir, I have a question, sir. Ang
Yes,
kini
Miss Naibe.
ang kini nga as built plan, sir, katong first ano baton kay katong first nga as built plan, sir, or katong gusto na nga balay nga gusto sa imong parents, sir. Kanang more
Ito
ilang
nang,
dream of something.
no, katong actual ninyo na house, muning first year. Yun lang i-draw in the template.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Ang katong for your parents nga dream house kunuhay ninyo, that will be for laboratory exercise number 3. Okay? 1.1 man eh. Still have to discuss kani atong inyo ang laboratory exercise number 2. Okay na? Napabay question? Okay, let me go to your next part. So in the next part, you need to draw the geodetic plan. Diba, I required you to get a land title, at least 200 square meter area. If more than that, you may extract just the 200 square meter. So what is inside a geodetic plan? The geodetic plan should contain the lot boundaries of the land where the house is located. So an example is this one. You should get a screenshot if it's digital, or take a picture of the lot description found on the title. So it should show the lot boundaries of points, like this one from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and then 4 to 1. We should also see, let me change it to appear bigger. We should also see the bearings, and I think you know this one from surveying. You should know this one today. These are the bearings of the lot. So the lines 1, 2 should have this bearing. 2 to 3 should have this bearing until you reach the end point. And then corresponding to that, you should also indicate the distances. The distance should be in meters because that's provided by law. And it should have an area indicated there in square meters, again, as indicated by law. Areas can be in square meter or hectares. Hectareage man na basta big. But for small housing, usually it's in square meter. So we should see this part, the lower portion, a technical description of the lot. In the upper part, you can copy the existing location map that you generated from exercise number 1.1. So just copy that and add them here. In the middle, we should be able to see the zoom view of the lot plan and its corresponding scale. Like in this case, it's 1:200. The scale should indicate all the points bounding the land and also the bearings with its corresponding distances. So normally we position our first point relative to the north, di ba? Study view of our surveying, no? In point 1, it should go to point 2. So that's why here it's south 26 degrees. So if I draw a vertical line here, south 26 degrees goes from 1 to 2. So muna nga na siya angle created here. As we go 2 to 3 dayon, it should be referred either from the north or south bearing. So you notice, puro south, 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 dayon, dire siya nag-north, kaya na naman siya sa fourth quadrant, pag-abot sa 3 to 4. So just review your surveying, kay gamit kayo na sa diring aspect. Okay, once you input these values sa lot description, it should create a closed polygon, okay? So let me show you a quick way of doing that in AutoCAD. Okay, so can you see my screen? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sige. Let's try to draw the lot nga na dito sa lot description. First, draw a circle. C is the command for circle, or you can just type the word circle. Then press enter. Just place it anywhere, and then just create a small circle. Okay, that's enough size. You can zoom in, and then from that circle, you create a line. The line should either be L enter or LINE enter. Either way, it should work. And then you need to draw the line from this point, the center of the circle, towards any part of the drawing plate. Now, the drawing plate can be affected by the function that's already running. So in this case, my ortho function is on. You can also turn it off, okay? When you turn this off, you can find and look for the ortho mode in the lower portion. It should appear like a right triangle with two lines and a rectangle or a square. You can also press F8 in your keyboard if you're annoyed with looking for it in the screen. So you need to turn this off. Why? Just to guide you how the line behaves if you place the point in any part of the drawing plane. But if you're comfortable with an ortho mode, it's also good. You're not really compulsive when the line is always on the vertical and the horizontal part. But normally, I just let the ortho mode off, okay? Like this one. Now, when we specify the next point, you can actually use the function of the pairing line. So if we go back to the drawing plan, and then with a distance of 17.34. So how do we plot this one in AutoCAD? First, add the word or symbol at. Okay? And symbol nga at, that's the other function you can find with number 2. And then input the distance. It's 17.34. Diba? Let me check. Yeah, 17.34. Wait, no. 17.34. And then input the bearing. That's the angle. So that's less than. There's a less than button in the keyboard. You can also just input from the screen. Kinaman to yung box na less than a certain angle. You can also do that. Next, we can use the bearing values. So in the technical description, it was south 2618. Okay? But you need to add the letters to indicate as siya nga bearing lines. So S28, ano ba ako? 28? 26. 26, okay? And then, mag-ask din ka, sir, asa ang bottom sa degrees? You can just put D. Okay? D na symbol. D, and then 18 minutes. And then sa 18 minutes, 1/8, then use the symbol, that's one quotation or half quotation mark. And then towards the end, you also need to add the east bearing. So E, then press enter. Okay? So now I have the line for 1 to 2. Nagets? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next, if I need to move from the next point, I can copy this. Wait lang. Okay. I can copy this one, the circle. Just use, first, sorry. Select this figure or the circle, left click lang. It should be highlighted as with the blue dots. And then input the command CO. CO is for copy, okay? You can also use Control C, but that's mostly for text files. So make sure that the snap function is also on. There's a snap function here, and I hope also that you learned this one in your computer-aided drafting, no? Okay, I can't review everything for you. So from this point, left click and then copy it to the end of the line. Okay, that's how you copy figures in AutoCAD. Next, we'll draw the next line. So just line, enter, left click on the point, and then just input the distance by adding the @command or symbol rather, and then use the distance of 55.56. 55.56, and then for the angle, add less than, and then the bearing functions. It's S54, S54D to indicate that's degrees, and then 26 minutes. So 26, then the symbol for a minute, and then W indicating west bearing. Then press enter. Okay? So na nakataas. In cases like this, yung mo overlap, you can always select the figures and then use the M command for move. Okay? And then click one part of that and move it somewhere. Okay? So my next move is to copy the circle. Okay? CO, enter, left click, and then left click on the position where it should be terminating. So I have that part. Next, I'll continue with the line command from this point and then go back to my lat description. It's 17.31. So at 17.31 less than, then I'll add my bearing N38, N38B. Okay. And then next, 49 minutes west. 49 minutes west. Then press enter. Okay. So next move, copy a circle. The circles are actually representations of your kanang concrete posts for kanang gitawag na to muhon. Munang circle na siya kay muhon is circular. Okay. Next, to close the figure, what I do usually is copy whatever content I have from the lab description. But in some cases, it doesn't close. So you can just draw the last point and place it on the first point. Okay, so you can actually close the figure by that. But the other way is just to interpret what you have from the lab description. And you should see a simple but a little gap. So kita na kung saan nakadako ang gap, no? So I can add the distance, use the symbol at, and 59.36. 59.36. Oh, sorry. The bearing should be north. And, sorry. Distance from data, no? 59.36. Then add less than, and then N54, N54D. Next would be 59 minutes, 59 minutes. And then the last bearing, which should be east, E, enter. Okay? So now, you see, hindi mo close, di ba? From the last description, it has a gap. The gap should be, if I measure it using dim linear function, it's significant at 0.3 meters. Okay? But what should we do with this gap? What is indicated on the plan manggod should be a closed figure. So you should force to close the figure. Okay? Dili pwede nga na gap. But in mind, you should also remember that in the actual survey of the lot, it doesn't close. Okay? The purposes lang of having the lot description is for legality purposes. Okay, if cases nga na lot dispute, ang basehan sa court is on what is indicated in the land title. Okay? So only the land title will be used. And embedded in the lot title na ay errors. So that's part of your knowledge as civil engineer soon na naging na siya errors. And the purposes of having those errors is to be integrated in the area calculation. So munang containing an area of 1,000 square meter, more or less, di ba? Because it's not accurate. So naapo na siya nga section sa land title. If you have the old land titles, I doubt kung na is indication no more or less, but it's actually required sa atong mga plans. Okay? So now that you have that figure, you can then draw the lot boundary. If the lot has a lot number, you can add it in the middle, and then indicate also the location of the road. So, ang road, pwede ra estimated, pwede sa kung na kayo ma-extract from Google Earth, you can draw that and add it in your drawing. Okay? Nakuha to?
Sir. Always jud
Yes.
kanang rectangle ang kanang kuan sir, kanang lot walay kanang mga other polygon nga shape.
No, dili man na siya always rectangle. Na-timingan lang nga ang ako ang lot description was for a subdivision. Sorry. And for subdivisions, normally it's rectangular. Pero og inyo na nga titulo kay mga mother lot pag yun nga pang farm, di ba? Adi, rectangular. May uban na nga kanang square or kanang irregular ang shape. So nakadepende pa.
So unsaon sa pagkuan sir, extract if 200 square meters ra imong kuanon.
Okay. First, you draw the whole lot. And then you just draw a line ng pag-divide nimo, that division or section will be 200 square meters. Ikaw na bala mangita sa
So estimate
lote asa to.
ang coordinates niya. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pero be mindful lang because I indicated, di ba, one line lang. It should be one line to divide the lot, and that line, you should be able to know the bearing, the distance, para makasolve ka sa full area. Nakuha?
Pag dili kayo klaro sir. Ang
Dili klaro?
naputol lang kuan.
Di ba na kay mother lot? Mag-draw
Yes, sir.
pag line. Katong line nimo, you should be able to extract also the distance and bearing of that line.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Other
you.
questions? You're welcome. Other questions?
Sir,
Yes.
kailangan na na title lot, sir, or
Dili man. Kung sa imong silingan, sa imong classmate, okay ra. Basta kay naa.
okay, sir, thank you.
Any other question?
Ay sir, okay ra sir nga kung makita nga land title kay sa lain na lugar tapos ako ni siyang ikon sa Cagayan.
Pwede ra. Pwede ra.
Okay sir. Thank you sir.
Naapay pangutana?
What if walay land titles sir?
Walay land title. I will allow 2 students to have the same land title. So just ask from your classmate kung nasa, then you can use that. Hello? Nakuha to?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So same answer, Mr. Cabardo. I will allow two students to have the same land title. So you can borrow from your classmate. Borrow ha, dili copy. Hey na, borrow ang land title. Dili nga, kopyahon ng AutoCAD, di mo na i-submit. Dili. Borrow lang. Okay? So, ay, wait. If nilabaw gamay og 200, kailangan pa i-divide yapon. Approximately man akong giingon. Down ako sa instruction balik. At least, if more than, you can extract 200, di ba? If wala siya kaabot og 500 square meter, pwede ra. Ngayon na lang kayo na, di na daw i-complicate ang things nga inyo pini-cut. So kung wala na siya kaabot og 200, okay ra. Sir, the site development plan under LabSearch 1.1 can be extracted from Google Earth info. Yes, you can do that. And then just add the dimensions. Okay? Okay, wala na ba? Question. Consider na part sa ground floor ang basement. Masubo siya sa kamay. Siya gamay og height. No. Basement is a basement. It's not the ground floor. The basement is lower than the ground floor. So it should be a separate floor in your house. So basement, ground floor, and then second floor. Okay? It's the convention in the Philippines, no? Basement, ground floor, and then second floor. But if you're in Paris, diba? You watch Emily in Paris, diba? Ground floor is your is different from your first floor. So they have the ground floor, which is usually like a basement, and then you have the first floor, second floor, and then you go up. Complicated. Okay, napay line. Hirit, question? So I think we can end in about a minute, 6:45 p.m. Okay, kasi tired na po mo. We can entertain your questions if you send them through email or through eLearn. Or if you have access to my social media account in Facebook, you can also send it there. So thank you everyone for joining. We'll do a further discussion on the requirements of the drawings as we reach the third laboratory exercise. Remember that your third laboratory exercise will already include your proposed house designs. So we'll talk more about ecological designs. Why do I choose ecological designs, by the way? It's simple. Das dali siya i-draw. We can't do complicated drawings like Mediterranean house, or if we do say an American home, that's too complicated for you. So we'll do ecological house designs and also minimalistic designs. I'll focus on those two. But I'll not be very kanang simplistic in that description. Kay when you say minimal design, purely minimal manggod, strictly minimal, walay wall sa interior, lahos-lahos lang. So we also don't want that. At least on the small divisions and then some restrictions for privacy. So hope I give you enough time to do these things, and I hope that I also clarified your questions and your queries about the requirements. So that's all for now. Goodbye, everyone. Good night. Have a full lunch. and rest yun, until midnight if possible. Then you work towards dawn or whatever plan you have para mahuman. Okay, the
Thank you,
deadline
sir.
is March 30. We'll just plan ahead. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sige, sir.